YouTube is coming online. We're sending some data to Twitch.
Yeah, I see stuff on Twitch.
Why does that look so? There we go.
What I see it. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, I think we had you a little discombobulated. Owen,
Well, I'm always discombobulated.
we
just
both
don't
are.
show it.
That's true. I think we just move well within our discombobulation, our state of discombobulation. So, Owen, you know that today is ThursdAGE.
Yep.
And we're going to hang out and talk with some folks. I see some, we're loading in. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome to ThursdAGE with Owen KC Stephens. So you know what I am, my challenge today is to not use the word or That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try, and we'll see how that goes. Owen, how are you doing?
I mean, on a scale of 1 to pandemic, I'm fine. It is interesting trying to be a productive, independent, creative, or work with people, or really do anything in the current age that we find ourselves in. See, age. And it's just part of the process at this point.
Yeah, just to try to kind of maintain a purchase on some semblance of normalcy, whatever that might mean.
I have had a surprising number of conversations that have either begun or ended with, and then the pandemic happened.
Yes, that is very true. Hey, I see that we have a friend, Ismail. Am I saying that right, my friend? Are you seeing us? Because I'm seeing you. Yep. Okay, great. We've got our friend. We've got a friend over on the Twitch side of things who's sharing a little sad face, and hopefully that's only to commiserate with us as we work our way through the just the existential crisis that is life at this juncture. But enough of that. We have got a lot to talk about. I wanted to ask you a few questions. Where, just on the, on the wavelength of how much information can we impart, knowing that with the reach that you have, Owen, that people will. Probably don't want to give away the whole store, but we've got some things coming up that I think we want to maybe vaguely crow about.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I sort of feel like maybe the time for being vague, at least on ThursdAGE, is over, and we may not get into a whole bunch of details, but I don't want. I want people that are bothering to watch this live to be the first people to get any real bit of news about what's going on with the Fantasy Age line. And one way to do that is to say things before I've really been authorized to say them. And that's a simple way to make sure that we are ahead of the curve as far as giving out information goes. So without getting into hard dates, because pandemic, people have known since early last year that we are going to have another Fantasy Age rulebook coming out. And there are actually 2 Fantasy Age projects already. See, and now I'm saying, you said you weren't going to say, and I got infected with your, There are 2 Fantasy Age products currently on the slate that are coming forward, both of which I am very excited about. Charlotte Hamilton said, forgiveness, not permission. Yeah. Once I have put out a piece of information, there's no real point in people not giving me permission to do it. So one of those will actually be happening first, and I'm really excited about it, and it is going to be different from what we're actually talking about today, and I didn't have nearly as much to do with it, and I look forward to letting people in on it because it's going to be in their hands earlier, but that one I am going to be vague about. The other one, the bigger one, which is not going to come till later, and I can't give people exact dates because we don't know exactly how scheduling works these days. It can be very difficult to tell, is the book going to be developed in time? Are the artists going to be able to produce art on time?
With the laws of
And right
gravity
now,
and other
everything
things.
is in my hands, right? I'm not trying to lay the blame on anyone else. This project has been delayed because of me moving 3 times over the past year and a half and dealing with the pandemic, yada, yada, yada. But what we're going to be doing is releasing the Fantasy Age core rulebook. And this is going to be distinct from the Fantasy Age basic rulebook. We have the basic rulebook, and it gives you everything you need to play the game. And a lot of people have had 2 guesses on what this thing is going to be, this new core rulebook. One guess is that it will just be the Fantasy Age basic rulebook with material added from the Fantasy Age companion. And the other guess is that it is going to be Fantasy Age 2nd edition. And both those groups are right, and both those groups are wrong, which I hope will stir enough unsureness and controversy and opinions to get people to talk about it. But let me start with this for certain. The idea behind this book is that we will be giving you new options and fixing some things that we have gotten a lot of feedback on, and making the entire play experience more interesting and more fun without invalidating any other product you have. So if you have a Fantasy Age adventure, if you've got a Fantasy Age setting book, if you have a book that we have put out for, if you've got one of the little PDF adventures, those will all work hopefully perfectly with the new Fantasy Age core rulebook. So let me give you an example of how that might work, how we can both change things and have everything work very, very smoothly, 100% with previous stuff. If we decided, and I'm not saying this is one of the things we're doing, but if we decided that someone just said they could not be physically restrained from buying this book, and Troy said if someone tries, let us know. If we decided that the stunt Mighty Blow, which is a combat stunt, which adds additional damage to the stunt you're doing, if we decided that that stunt added even more damage than it does currently, if instead of 2 extra dice, you got 3 extra dice, whatever, that wouldn't impact adventures at all, because in adventures, we just tell you that someone has access to this stunt, or they have this stunt 1 point cheaper, that kind of thing. And so impacting the exact numbers of that stunt won't impact being able to use things in another game. Or if we said, okay, we're going to add new specializations, while those specializations aren't things that existed when we wrote the previous books, that just means that the people in those books won't have them, not that those things won't work with them. So we have no interest in invalidating anyone's existing material. People have been supporting this game. I'm very excited about this game. I want people to look at all the stuff they've had and go, oh, that's still material I can use. I'm happy with that. But I want them to be able to use it with some of the rough edges smoothed down and with some new options bolted on, because the whole age system is more mature than it was when the basic rulebook came out. And we've done a lot of things. We've done, the Expanse and Modern Age, and some Blue Rose material, for example. And there are things that were conceived of in those books that we would like to tell you how to use them for Fantasy Age. And then there are things that people have pointed out as potential problems in the way the game works. Emergent behavior, that is behavior that generated by the complexity of an entire system that is not obvious from looking at the individual parts of the system. So any role-playing game, after it's been out for a few years, emergent behavior begins to be more obvious. And there are a couple of different ways you can handle that as a game designer, game developer. You can ignore it and say, okay, that's just unexpected consequences, but that's the way the game works. You can save up all of those things and say, okay, when we have 100 pieces of emergent behavior and it's a problem, we will do a whole new edition of the game, and it won't be 100% backwards compatible, and it might be 0% backwards compatible, depending on what you're talking about. Like, one of the things that made people so unhappy about D&D 4th edition, for example, was that they felt it was 0% backwards compatible with 3rd edition. That's not always a problem. D&D 3rd edition is essentially 0% compatible with D&D 2nd edition, and it was extremely popular. So you have to be careful as a designer and developer to say, do I want to crack open this engine case and fix one or two things and risk having a belt
Unraveling,
slip
yeah.
or some other design metaphor? Or are we going to wait until we can redo the entire thing? But once you do that, obviously you've got a whole new system and new emergent behavior will develop. So what we're trying to do in this case is change things, but change things in such a way that none of your previous books are invalidated or made irrelevant. If you've got layers sitting on your shelf, we want you to be able to go, okay, I've got the basic rule book, which maybe I don't need to pull out anymore. Although if I want to teach this game to friends and I happen to have a basic rule book out, maybe I will pull it out. But I've got layers and I've got this adventure and I've got the bestiary. We want you to be able to pull those things out and go, okay, I can use the bestiary and layers and this adventure all with the core rule book, and I will not run into cases where I don't know what to do, where I can't use those with the new rule book. So that is a big design ask. We are quite excited about it. I am a big fan of the Age system in general. It's one of the reasons why I agreed to be the lead developer for it. And there are some people at Green Ronin. There's Malcolm and Steve Kenson and Joe Carricker, for example, and for that matter, of course, Chris Pramus, who have a lot more Age experience than I do. They are more aged, and I'm obviously working with them on putting this together, and they're doing a lot of the writing and a lot of the development. But I think we're going to have a book that does this very exciting thing, updating and modifying and improving the system without making people give up the things that they've already bought and like about the book that usually companies don't even try.
I gotcha. Hey, folks, just as a recognition, we know that we're having some audio issues on the Twitch side of things, but we are fine elsewhere. So hopefully people can read Owen's lips as I click around and figure that stuff out. So are you in a space right now to be able to elaborate a bit more on that? Emergent gameplay fascinates me, and it to me it's just one of those things that it's the X factor that tabletop roleplay allows to sort of flourish, and you get a lot more opportunity to see fans sort of create or sort of lean into a system that just organically kind of works with what you're trying to accomplish. I'm just curious if you've got maybe some insight, and I get it too if that's a little bit more than we can kind of dig into, but I'd love to hear about it.
No, we can dig into it a little bit. So one of the things that can happen when you are playtesting a game, and obviously we're working on playtests for the core rulebook. One of the things that can happen is that you have to focus your playtests on specific features and specific levels. So you might say, okay, everyone make new characters. All right, we'll play first through third. Okay, now make a 5th level character. Now make a 10th level character. Now make a 15th level character. You rarely have time to say, okay, let's make a 1st level character and play that 1st level character through absolutely every adventure it would take to get to 15th level. Which means that the rules could well say, hey, if you've got a 15th level character, this is what they should look like. But that might not be what they actually look like if a player makes choices 14 times going from 1st to 15th level. So there might be things where you say, here is a new arcana, and here are some of the spells for that arcana. And those spells might be super useful if you are a 15th level character, but not super useful if you're a 3rd level character, even though you can get them at 3rd level. So that becomes an emergent behavior where we have seen that no one selects this at the first fewer levels, or if they do, they regret it, even though a character selecting it later may well be rewarded for it. And an example of that would be if a spell is super effective, but has a really high target number to cast. So a low-level character could perfectly well take the arcana and be available to cast it, but will not be well rewarded because they will rarely succeed in casting it, or they will have to specifically develop techniques and options to be able to get bonuses to cast it. So they might be someone who's like, okay, in order to cast this arcana, I have to take the stay alert action every other round and presume I will get the +1 instead of being told a new piece of information. assuming I got stunt points, right? So I'm only casting this after I've gotten a stunt point, after I get +1, or after I get a spell casting stunt. It might become the spell list that at low levels you only cast when you've had stunt points or some other thing that gives you a bonus. And that's not something that was foreseen when it was designed. That can lead to players starting to lean into builds where they say, this set of options has been proven over time in gameplay at multiple levels to be more flexible, to be superior, to be more effective. And those are all cases where a build isn't dictated by the rules in the you must do this kind of way, but ends up being something that people lean into because of where the rules actually interact with dice and reality. Another example is if you want to be good at something, right now there are only so many ways to be good at it, right? I've got a thing, I take focus on the thing, maybe I can find a specialization that's relevant to the thing, and then after that all I can do is bring up my ability scores, and I can only do that every other level, and once they reach a certain point I have to try 2 or 3 times in order to keep bringing it up. And that can be good because it means that there is a cap to those numbers, so you don't get to the point where one character can do this thing all the time and everyone else can't do it ever at all. So if you have a thing in an adventure, only one character can do it, and only if they're super specialized. But it also means that if someone wants to be good at that thing, we have not given them a path to continue to want to be good at that thing. Or when you're talking about emergent behavior, if there are people that don't like using all the stunts because it takes too long to decide on what stunt they should do, and there isn't an obvious stunt. There isn't a stunt that you can say, hey, if nothing else is going on, if you don't have anything else going for you, you can take this stunt, and that stunt will always give you some benefit that you can apply in any situation that might not match exactly what you're doing, but it is an option that you can fall back to anytime you don't want to take more time to look them up. Or I mean, sometimes people play these, I sometimes play these games until 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I might well be able to analyze every possible tactical option when we first start playing, but later I'm tired and I didn't sleep well last night, and I'm worried about political situations and the pandemic, and oh my god, I've got 5 stunt points, and I want to do extra damage. Then I don't know what to do with this remaining point. If there's some sort of go-to, I can just say, okay, I'm going to do this thing, I'm excited about that, and then I will go to this one stunt option. So are all areas where how the players and the GM actually interact with the rules end up making certain things interact in ways that weren't predicted, or combine them in ways that weren't predicted and probably couldn't be predicted, honestly, human beings being the complex creatures they are. But once we've seen that, if it's a good thing, then we want to lean into it. If it is a bad thing, then we want to say, is there some way we can solve a negative and unpleasant emergent behavior without ruining or complicating the game past the point that people enjoy it, will not want to play it anymore.
I dig it.
So those are all examples of the kind of thing that you can put into a game. And sometimes one of the problems is that a game master is one brain, and if you've got 4 players, that one brain is facing against 4 brains, and so every time stunt points come up for the players, they can all get together and decide on something smart to do, and the poor game master, I mean, there are groups, I'm sure, where players recommend good and useful things for the game master to use his stunt points for, but that is not going to be the norm. And so you might want to say, okay, well, here are some styles of creatures. So we're going to say, here are creatures that are used to a heavy hitter style, and here are a few stunts that they can default to, and then we could just list with a creature, this creature's a heavy hitter, and the GM knows, okay, if I get stunt points and nothing leaps to mind, I can just go to the heavy hitter list and pick just from the regular combat stunts without having to give them any extra stunts, just as an extra crutch for the game master. That is something useful that we can add to a game. It won't be in the existing bestiary, but that doesn't mean the bestiary doesn't work. It just means that going forward, when we create creatures, we can give you this additional piece of information without actually changing how the game works.
So this is the kind of stuff that I love to unpack. I know that we've got some people. Looks like Rain says, I've noticed that my players seem to be a bit disappointed that there is nowhere else to go when you max out the ranks in a talent. They can take focus, 3 talents, and then be maxed out on the stuff that they want to do from the outset, and then they start to branch out. What do you have to say about that?
Um, that is absolutely one of the things that is developed as emergent behavior, and it's a two-edged sword, right? Again, you want people to be able to continue to develop their characters in ways that interest and excite them. One of the things about a class level based game is that you really want people to be excited every time they get a level and looking at the next level. Ooh, next level I can increase my accuracy because I'm an archer. That's exciting. And that's a hard concrete thing where I'll be better at things. Or next level, I'll get a new specialization. And I'm excited to pick up the master level of my specialization. And if there aren't enough exciting options, then you lose some of the fun of leveling and looking forward to the next level. I sorry, I saw another question which we may tackle in a minute, or it may be beyond the scope of this episode. The flip side of that is that you don't want people to be able to constantly improve something till they break the curve that the game expects, right? There's a reason that you can't put all of your ability boosts into one ability and always give it a +1, because if you did by 20th level, if you'd started with a 5 strength, you could have a 25 strength, and the game is simply not set up to deal with that number. That is outside the scope of what makes sense for that, right? 3d6 is only an 18-point range. If your total bonus is more than +18, not only are the dice irrelevant to you, but if we ever want the dice to be relevant, if we ever want you to have a chance to fail, that means that no one else who has not done that level of super specialization has a shot at it. So it's a balancing act. And one of the things we can do when we're looking at doing a new core rulebook, where we want to add new options and we want to add new ways for people to interact with the game, is we can say, what are those common objections? What are those things that players say a lot that we get as regular feedback? How can we try to give them some option and yet not break the game? And that second point is obviously very important. And there are ways to tackle that, and obviously we're looking at some of them. We have also ruled out some, and when we do a playtest, which we will be doing a playtest, and there will be more information on those in an upcoming ThursdAGE, maybe as soon as next week, we'll have more information at least. We will be able to say, please test these systems, look at them, see if this is fun, see if this is exciting. And of course, a playtest has to allow time to bring the game back after the playtest and make changes. I'm the sort of person who, when I'm running a playtest for a game, likes to not err on the side of caution for the playtest. So I may go a little extreme with playtest things and say, hey, this looks like it might be fun, or it might be wildly wacky and out there. And that way we can put it in people's hands and get actual player and game master and fan feedback on it instead of guessing. And if we put out 5 wacky things and people say, well, I like this one, but these other 4 are all crazy, what are you thinking? Absolutely not. Then we can go back and say, okay, it's a common piece of feedback. We can adjust the design for that.
Now we've got a pretty aggressive schedule. I pause and I said just dropped it hard, just a hard and I'm going to try to stop that. But the thing, I think counts as well. The thing that is important is for us. I know, right? I swear to God, the more I try to stop doing it, the more I do it. But the notion that we have people who are really excited to play and really wanting to kind of dig in, there has been a bit of thought as to sort of the framework of all of this. Do you want to speak a bit to that mix of sort of the push-pull of people need time to play, but they need to be quick?
I will. I don't want to go into it in detail, because until I'm actually ready to release dates and have a call to action and say, go to this place and press this button, I don't want to get into exactly what we're doing
The
with
weeds of it
playtest too
all.
much. But certainly, we will only be able to give people so many weeks to playtest, and then we will need them to give us their feedback in a concrete set format that we will put out there. I would love to have the time to sit down with a cup of coffee and some danishes with everyone that played it and spend 4 or 5 hours going over their philosophy on why they liked this option better than that option, and just have a general round table discussion. But my hope is that we're going to get enough people playtesting that I just can't do that. So the format is going to be important to follow. If you Yeah, I'll try and make sure there's a spot for, do you have anything else to say, because I don't want to shut down people's creativity and feedback.
Sure.
But in order to go through a lot of feedback, we will have to have a form that says, okay, you've had X number of weeks to look over this, to play it, to try things out. How did this work? How did that work? How did you like this thing? And that lets me make comparisons to that data very, very quickly, relatively speaking, which is important because that all has to happen before we can finish the design and then send it off to editing and then get art for it and put it in layout. It takes time to put these things together, and it is always a push-pull between how many people are going to run it, how long will they have to run it, how many times can we run a play test. I have never had any game, no matter who I was working for, where I was able to play test it as much as I think it could theoretically benefit from, right? Ideally, I would put out a draft, I'd send it out, everyone would get 3 months, and then we would take 2 months to go through all their feedback, and then we would put out another whole edition and give people another 3 months, and then we'd take 2 months, and then we'd do it another time. And now we're talking about, a year or two of play testing, during which time no one gets the final version of the rule book. People are unlikely to buy other material because they don't know what the final rule book is going to look like.
Yeah.
We can't make money on the rule book yet, but we have to pay all these people. So we're taking the time to do some play testing so that we can try and get this right and not rush it. But there's a limit to what any company for any project can do on play testing. And in this case, I think we're going to be talking about people having a few weeks, and then we will have to take their feedback and move forward. So once we can tell people exactly when we're launching and how to get the playtest documents and how to give us the feedback, obviously it'll be nice to give them some headway so they can try and clear their schedules. And it won't just be 1 week, right? We'll have a few weekends in there, and we didn't launch it until after the primary holidays are over because we assumed that people are going to have better things to do. But when it comes, we'll need to be fairly prompt with it.
Absolutely. The other piece of this as well is that this is we got to move a little fast, and there is a couple, we'll say a couple weeks of time for people to kick the tires, as it were. Do you want them to play more than one, like kind of coordinate more than one session?
I want them to do as much as they have time and energy and spoons and enthusiasm for. So it would be great if everyone can do a few play tests, but even just one actual sitting down with people or getting on a virtual tabletop or whatever and playing a game with the new rules is better than nothing. And playing even once is better than just reading it and giving me your opinion. And again, that's a lot of that is about emergent behavior. That no one, I mean, I certainly can't, and no one I know in the industry who can just read a rule book and foresee everything that is going to happen and what will be fun and what the table feel will be. And table feel's a term that Steve Kenson came up with that I am adopting and pushing as hard as I can, is an important part of people enjoying a role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are a veteran and you're experienced and you've got your group, you can do some pretty good guesses on how things will be reacted to the table, but you can't ever be sure. And if it turns out that of your 4 players, 3 of them are like, this is fine, and one of them is like, this is the best rules change ever, that's something I want to know. That's feedback that is more useful than, hey, I read this and I like this and it looks like it would handle this problem. Having people read through it and give me their opinions is great, but the best play test involves playing, and obviously the more play you can get in, the better.
Absolutely. I dig it. There are, let's see here. Oh, our good friend Nicholas says, I'm the Mutants and Masterminds 3E GM, and my players have been begging for hit points and damage dice conversion. How can I simply convert damage bonuses and toughness saves to damage rolls? Do we want to unpack this? That's a lot.
It is. I've got things I've done, and I certainly understand if you're comfortable with hit points and damage dice instead of a damage save, which is how Mutants and Mastermind handle things. I certainly understand wanting to go back to what you're comfortable for. I could opine, but I'll be honest with you. That is a question I think you are actually best off saving for a Mutants and Masterminds Monday, because Steve Kenson, who wrote a couple editions of the game, and Crystal Frazier, who has done the Basic Heroes Handbook and a lot of the adventures and worked with it as the current developer, are going to give you a smarter, better answer than I do. So I recommend rather than get my subpar B list answer that you go ask the experts and get them to talk to you about it.
But
On a
whenever could
Monday.
they do so?
And I'm
On
sure Troy is happy to
Monday.
tell you when that will occur on Monday.
2 p.m. Pacific. It's Mutants and Masterminds Monday, and Owen, I swear, you are just like I would make a chef's kiss, but I'm disembodied. Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. And that is that's a great way to sort of redirect. We are certainly glad you're here, though, my friend, and I'm glad that you asked that question, even if we need to sort of roll you over to the other library. Let's see.
Hey, according to this, the Facebook stream died.
It did? Uh-oh. I wonder why.
Whereas we are still streaming on Twitch, but they can't hear us.
Well, I'm going to disconnect and reconnect. Wonder why this is doing this.